Well, thank you so much, Mark, for that introduction. Hello, everybody. It is really great to be with this group here at the Chamber. As some of you may know, I spend quite a bit of time here at the Chamber, and it's because the intersection between government work, the work that business is doing, and issues like today's issue are so incredibly important. We have to leverage all of our resources to not only build a more resilient economy, but to do it effectively, to do it in a way that I think gets the most bang for our buck. At the Department of Commerce, our responsibilities span really the waterfront of issues. We may be the most widespread and diverse agency in the federal government, aside from the White House. And one that I and many of my colleagues at Commerce are deeply involved in is watching, predicting, and researching our weather and our oceans, predicting the next heat wave. I think I can say that we know when that's taking place, monitoring our marine fisheries, contributing to a vibrant and vital blue economy. And the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration at Commerce, their climate work and their emphasis on weather's intersection with the American economy puts it at the tip of the spear for not just the Department of Commerce, but for the entire federal government. The critical environmental intelligence that NOAA, including the National Weather Service, have allows for communities, for businesses, other institutions to make really informed decisions about what they need to invest in, how they need to prepare, especially as we continue to experience the effects of climate change. One thing that we all know firsthand, especially recently, is how extreme weather events can disrupt our lives and our livelihoods. Just 2 weeks ago, nearly one-third of this country was experiencing excessive heat warnings and advisories. Excessive rain and flash flooding devastated parts of the Northeast. Canadian wildfire smoke, which I'm sure many of you dealt with, continue to affect our air quality in communities across the country, including here in DC. What our science is showing, as you all know, no doubt, is a worsening of a certain type of extreme weather events, such as extreme heat, torrential rains, and so on. This has an outsized impact, not just on our daily lives, but also on our economy and communities really everywhere. Phoenix, just as an example, it's been in the news, seems like every day, has gone over 3 weeks with daily high temperatures over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That's astounding. 5 to 9 inches of rain fell, as I said, in Vermont, causing devastating flash flooding. Still, folks are digging out and recovering from that, and I think they will be for a while still. These recent events have informed the nature of our work, and the knowledge that we know can only be a powerful tool when we translate that data, that information, into real action. We need to take the critical data and information that NOAA and other organizations provide and use it in the creation and implementation of climate resilience measures that not only safeguard the American people, but shore up the American economy. It's about protecting, preserving our economy, but also creating opportunities for business to lead the way with new innovations. Commerce through NOAA is responsible not only for weather and climate forecasts, as you know, but the data that goes into those forecasts, and as well as the observations that verify that data and that information, the information that the scientists then use and communicate. Through the first half of 2023, building on what we saw in 2022, which was a record-setting year for severe weather events, we've had 12 separate billion-dollar weather and climate disasters already. That is unbelievable, given that we are just getting into the worst part of the year for severe weather events. It's the second highest amount through the first 6 months of the year in our history, or since we began keeping records in 1980. And just last year, we saw 18 separate events totaling almost $177 billion in damage. The last 3 years have observed disasters totaling $60 billion, costing over $450 billion in damage and more than 1,400 deaths. That's to say nothing of the burden extreme weather puts on our supply chains. If shipments are delayed, as we've seen, due to a hurricane, or rails breaking down due to extreme heat, flights being grounded because of unsafe weather conditions, tornadoes disrupting, as you all have seen and heard, disrupting some of our critical supply chains, our economy overall suffers. Climate change's effect on extreme weather, combined with more Americans and vital infrastructure living in harm's way, really necessitates our incorporation of climate resilience strategies into planning, not just at the federal level, not just at the corporate level, but at every level across the United States, local, regional, state, federal, with individual businesses and organizations, and frankly at the personal and family level. As Deputy Secretary of Commerce, I know how integral planning is for weather and climate, for our businesses, for our economy. Luckily, as I stated, we have the data that can help us make the important decisions that are necessary to build that climate, that resilience, like climate observations, like weather and climate forecasts, climate projections, socioeconomic data. The key is the integration of that data, and then, as I said, the utilization of the data. Simply providing the data isn't the whole picture, and that's why NOAA has been a leader in designing user-friendly interactive tools. Just to name a few of these, our climate mapping for resilience and adaptation tool, a first of its kind hub of integrated information, including future climate projections, as well as non-climate data such as new building codes and social vulnerability information, to help communities, help federal agencies and other levels of government better understand their exposure to climate hazards and to strengthen their resilience plans. And I want to go back quickly to the building data. It's another part of the Commerce Department that I doubt folks actually know about. Building codes are done at the state and local level, but the standards that are developed for our assessment of how buildings perform, the work that we do based on building disasters, it's done by the National Institutes of Standards and Technology at Commerce. For instance, the unfortunate collapse of the building in Sunrise, Florida, just a couple years ago. That's the NIST team that's doing the forensics that will then be used, despite that disaster, that could be used to help prevent disasters going forward. That's the type of data that we can then feed into the prediction and the modeling that, that this new mapping for resilience and adaptation tool is going to be used for. Heat.gov, another one of our great tools. It's the premier source for all Americans and all American business to find important information about hot weather. The site also features resources on combating heat from across the government. So it's not just NOAA data. We get it from departments of energy, interior, EPA, et cetera. Heat forecast information, heat planning and preparation guides for public health and healthcare providers, for decision makers, for local, state, and territorial and tribal governments, and information for at-risk and those populations that are disproportionately impacted by heat weather events. Another of our tools is drought.gov, which is the federal government's authoritative drought information website. It's a one-stop shop for data, decision support products, resources, and information on drought, from drought monitoring and prediction to planning and preparedness to applied research. These are just a handful of the tools that we have at NOAA and the Department of Commerce, but they provide millions of people and businesses with the information and, importantly, the context that they need to make the most informed decisions possible to protect themselves, their loved ones, and their businesses. In addition to all of the wealth of information and data that we can provide from Commerce, we also have meaningful investments in climate resiliency. So it's really where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. President Biden's Investing in America agenda extends across the department's work. So, of course, it includes NOAA, and it ranges from investing in things like the latest Hurricane Hunter aircraft. Yes, we're the ones who get to fly those really cool planes, Kermit and Miss Piggy, into the heart of a hurricane as it approaches landfall to take the most up-to-date observations and get the best predictions so that we can continue to monitor those devastating storms. It also includes investments through things like the bipartisan infrastructure law to strengthen our climate resilience. Through the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make critical investments in climate resilience across the board. So as we work to decrease our emissions, we're also focusing on mitigating the social and economic impacts of climate change that we know are also hitting us now and that will be exacerbated in the years to come. So combined, the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act are providing more than $6 billion to NOAA to take action over the next several years on habit restoration, coastal resilience, enhancing our weather forecasting capabilities. And through those funds, NOAA is going to be able to better address climate risks like flooding, fire, drought, extreme heat, while also helping communities and our economy, as I said, become more resilient in the face of the climate crisis. We've grouped those priorities into 3 different categories. I'm just going to quickly go through them. Climate Ready Coasts is an initiative that is aiming to help coastal communities by investing in high-impact natural infrastructure projects that will help to build resilience, create jobs, store carbon, and restore habitats. I've been to a number of our projects that are doing just this, and the impact that they're already having in a very short time is nothing short of profound. The efforts are also going to address marine debris issues, which is one of the most pervasive threats to the health of our oceans and waterways. So we're dealing with climate resilience while also dealing with some of the other biggest challenges that we're facing in our oceans. Second initiative is climate data and services, which is supporting a whole-of-government approach to addressing the climate crisis by getting the critical information that I talked about in the hands of decision makers and communities, particularly to address those things that I discussed, so flooding, wildfire, drought, and ocean health. Fisheries and protected resources investments. They're going to a way for us to invest in supporting sustainable fisheries, environmental stewardship, and promoting community and economic development. I'm going to quickly hit a couple things because I think I've gone way over my time limit, but it's important that you hear about this. Our Economic Development Administration. I'm sure many of you had never thought of EDA as a source of support for for climate resilience. EDA is in the Commerce Department, and they are executing on projects to ensure economic resilience and long-term recovery. Since the 90s, we've invested a cumulative amount of $3.2 billion in support of communities. We know that those numbers are going to go up probably exponentially as we invest to develop comprehensive plans for communities, aligning things like hazard mitigation and community and economic development strategies in the planning efforts of local communities. I talked a little bit about supply chain. So we have our International Trade Administration that is focusing on the resilience of America's supply chain. That is a huge and important issue for us. Certainly it's an issue for our trading partners around the world, from medical devices to emergency vehicles to strikes like the one that we averted narrowly just yesterday, the natural disasters that we're seeing here and around the world. We've taken a lot of steps to make sure that we have a more resilient set of supply chains. We're going to continue to do that, connect businesses with the information that you all need to make better decisions about what to do, even in times of crisis. Resilience isn't just a policy term that we throw around in government. At the department, it's ingrained into everything that we do. It's work that hopefully will help all of you, and especially our communities and businesses, to make the best and most informed decisions possible, because, as I said, a resilient economy hinges on, and our future hinges on how we respond to, how we take the data and the research that we have and use it to change our practices and to adapt. Luckily for us, through bureaus like NOAA, through EDA, through the International Trade Administration, and other parts of commerce in the federal government, we're really leading the charge on gathering data, providing it in a format that you all can use to make better decisions on how our journey towards resilience will move forward, implementing solutions that will make our economy stronger and more resilient than ever before. I want to thank you all for everything that you do. You can obviously use those tools, but also go to commerce.gov to hear and see a lot more of the work that we're doing around climate resiliency. Thank you for everything that you do every day, and we look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.